How's it hanging, guys? Aaron from PhoneDog.com. And if you're a carrier like Verizon that had a really successful device like the Motorola Droid X, what are you going to do? Where you're going to release a second one with better internals, but perhaps the same design. Here it is, the Motorola Droid X2 or Droid X Squared. It's going to come out in stores tomorrow. It's available now online for $199.99. And yeah, while it's a 3G only device, it's the most powerful device actually in Verizon's lineup. It has a 1 GHz NVIDIA Tegra 2 dual-core processor. And I don't want to spoil it for you, but in terms of speed tests, it's the fastest Verizon device available right now. 8-megapixel camera, no front-facing camera, but a nice QHD screen in place of that non-QHD screen on the Droid X. It's running Android 2.2 right now, upgradable to Android 2.3. So it's a pretty well-equipped device, but the question remains, with the Thunderbolt, the Revolution, the Droid Charge, is it better to go with a lower-spec 4G phone or go with this really high-end dual-core device that can take advantage of 4G? We're going to find out that and more in the review. But first, special thanks to our guys at Best Buy. They've hooked us up with a bunch of smartphones that we're giving to you in the One Paw Bandit game. So when you go to Best Buy Mobile, you walk out working, you get this, they'll help you set up your email, they'll help you set up your web, they'll help you set up everything. So when you walk out, you're working. But enough of that, let's get into the review. Is this the device to have? Should you go back 3G? Over into part 2, continuing on the Motorola Droid, Android 2.2, Moto Blur, and all the improvements and changes on this device. Like I said, back to Moto Blur, you can see that there are the changes, but you still have your 7 home screens, which you can see down here with the little dots. You can move over like this, you can press home twice, and bring up profile home, and then you can go between whichever screen you want to go to, so we can go bam like that, and scroll back over if we wanted to. So not a lot of changes there, but one thing I do like, and if you've seen my Moto Blur based videos, you know where I'm going here, but the widgets. Moto Blur's widgets are some of my favorite, and not only are they some of my favorite, I also like the fact that they're resizable. So we can go in here and take a look, for example, at date and time. Now you pull up a widget like HTC Sense, or a widget on HTC Sense rather, or you pull up a widget on TouchWiz, it's not really customizable. It's pretty much a set size, and it goes on one of the screens, and if you run out of space, too bad. Well, with Moto Blur's widgets, you can customize to an extent the size of the widget. Now it looks like I can't customize that way, but you see, I can bring it down like that if I wanted to, make it take up that much of the screen. I can pull it in a little bit, make it take up that. So it's just nice if you're in an area where you don't have a lot of space left, but you want to fill it up with a widget or something like that. You can do that. Also, you'll notice the delete is up here at the top now, as opposed to being down at the bottom. But you can do that with a lot of Motorola's widgets. For example, we did date and time. Let's do calendar. And bring up here, let's do that. And you can see 25 Wednesday, May, and I can bring it to that size if I want to, and make it whatever size that I want it to be. So just a lot of customization, and I like that ability to do that on Motorola Blur. So it's one benefit. Say what you will about Moto Blur, even in the new form you may not like it, but at least that's a benefit. So 7 home screens, you can see that I have some widgets up here already, and you can of course move widgets around, move apps to the bottom. So you have your Motorola widgets, you have Android widgets. And let's go through the list real quick just so I can show you. You have some of the toggles, you have date and time, just to name a few. Calendar, I am presence, messages, picture frame, social networking, which you can see the updates from Facebook, Twitter, MySpace, other social networks, so kind of an aggregation tool. You have world clock as well. So a lot of different options from Motorola. Then you have the typical Android widgets as well. Bring those up. And then you see some that I've installed like battery life, but in advanced task killer. But you have some typical Verizon and Android widgets as well. So you have music, news, and weather. I've always enjoyed news and weather. I'll show you that one, for example, too. Bring up it, put it right there. Discrepancy in the weather. Uh-oh. But you get the idea. You have the choice of both. Now, obviously, because they're Android widgets, they're not Moto Blur specific. They're not customizable. So something to keep in mind. But overall, you'll just see differences. I know I keep harping on this, but it may be kind of hard to see in the camera, but you'll see some differences in the color scheme. Just for example, this is how white this looks in the back, and you have these 2 shades of blue here. Little differences there. You'll also see things like, go to wireless networks, the way the check boxes look, very different. So I turn on Wi-Fi, for example, it's going to bring up a green arrow. So you just notice little things like that if you've worked with the device in the past. Let's actually want to play around and go to Need for Speed. You've seen Gmail, you've seen Android Market if you've watched these videos. Let's go into Need for Speed Shift, because this has that dual-core processor, the NVIDIA Tegra 2 dual-core processor, so it's got to be good when it comes to games. So we're going to load up Need for Speed Shift and give it a test here. if you want to race and take it to your local track. No, man, this is how I drive all the time. No, I'm just kidding. I don't condone that. Do not drive like that. Let's see here. How do I play? Quick race. And I'm going to go to Tokyo. Yeah, let's do that. That works. Circuit races are all about endurance. That's right. I know this because I theoretically run 27 miles per hour. If you didn't see part 1 of the video, you're going to be like, what's he talking about? So let's see. Just to load it up, and you can just see the graphics as a result of that processor. So pretty fast. And bam, there we go. So I can't remember actually how to stop. I don't think you can. Just turn, use the accelerometer to turn. Oh, hit you. That's how I drive in real life, yo. Crack my windshield and all. This is how I go get groceries. No wonder nobody in my family wants to ride with me. This is what happens. But you get the idea. I mean, look at the background. I can't really look up at the moment, but look in the background. You can see the city back there. I mean, just the graphics are pretty impressive, given the fact that it's a smartphone. It has an NVIDIA Tegra 2, like I said, 1 gigahertz. So pretty fast. I'll do this just for a second longer, just so you can see. And bam! And I crash. But you get the idea. Very fluid, very smooth, no lag whatsoever that I could see. So definitely a testament to how powerful that processor is. Now I'm starting a new segment in this part 2 of these videos called, well, I haven't really named it, so I don't really have anything I call it, but what I'm doing is I'm taking it to Twitter and asking you for your questions. So earlier I wrote on my Twitter page, I said, what would you like to know about the Droid X2? And I'm just going to go through and answer some of those questions as quickly as I can. One, everyday performance compared to the Charge. This thing, and this is back to what I was saying, it's a faster device. It's a much faster device than the Charge, so in everyday performance, the phone itself is going to be faster. Now, if you need those 4G speeds, if you're tethering via mobile hotspot, you know, for work, or you need the 4G connectivity and you live in a 4G area, and that's more important to you, obviously the Charge is going to be the device to get. In terms of speed of, you know, and performance of Android 2.2 and the overall system, the Droid X2 is where it's at. Is it worth $199 for a non-4G LTE device? We have to keep in mind with Verizon, they're creating this 4G price point. And you know, a lot of people aren't really aware of this, but they're creating this like $249 to $299 price point for their 4G devices. If you notice, they kind of sneakily left their 3G devices at $199 and then priced all the 4G stuff at $250 and up. So I think that's the price point you're going to see going forward. You're going to see $199 for all these 3G devices like the Incredible 2 and the Droid X2, and then you're going to see $250 to $300 for the Revolution, the Thunderbolt, and all the others. So I think it's worth $200. I think, you know, it's by far the fastest device in their lineup right now, fastest smartphone in terms of everyday performance. And if you don't need the 4G, then it's the way to go. Another thing, which I'll call out a little bit later in the video, the reception on this device is the best Verizon device I've used in some time. I mean, call quality on this thing is fantastic. I mean, I have, you know, for example, when I was working with the Charge, I was getting 2 bars of service sitting in the same area. I'm getting 4 here. RF is fantastic on this device. Very pleased with it. Not just that, the earpiece is loud as well. So, I mean, if you're looking for a device to make phone calls, I can already tell you this is the device to get out of Verizon's lineup. You call the Droid X2 the X squared. Yeah, this was it. Shout out to you, Joseph. Is it Gubbles or Goobles? On Twitter, because that's exactly what I was curious about in part 1. I'm not sure if it's Droid X2 or Droid X squared, because squared is what's written on the back, but then, you know, Droid X2 is how it's written in the press stuff. So I'm calling it the Droid X2. It may be the X squared. It's very possible. I'm just going to call it the Droid X2 squared dos do other languages that equal 2. You get the idea. Do I have to pay for the 2-year contract if I want a phone for the phone? Oh wait, that's not a Droid X2 question. That's a Phone Dog Sweepstakes question. I'll get back to that. Everything you can talk about, I've done my best. What do you want to know about the phone? Games. You saw Need for Speed a few minutes ago. Does the Droid X2 feel faster than the Atrix? Absolutely. It does feel much faster to me than the Atrix. But then again, the Atrix is kind of running that bloated Moto Blur, the older version, which I think, you know, contributes a lot to how slow it is. It's really unfortunate because I think the Atrix has some great hardware, but I think it's really bogged down by the version, the particular version of Moto Blur that it's running. Is it worth burning an upgrade on or without LTE? What's the quadrant score? Getting into that in just a second. They also need to, let's see, discuss the Moto Blur experience. That's what I was discussing, and actually, you know, I've been really pleased with this one. I think this is kind of like, if you look at the 2 other versions of Moto Blur, you look at the Droid X, and then you look at like the Atrix 4G, which is kind of the full-on. This one kind of falls in the middle. Like, it's not all the way skinned, but it's pretty close. Like, it's like still a toned down version, but it's not as toned down as what was on the original Droid X. I think this is a pretty healthy balance. It's worked well, and it's still very fast to me, so it's not experiencing the slowdowns like the Atrix experience and like some of the mid-range Motorola devices. So, you know, I think it's reasonably fast. Let's go into speed test and take a look in quadrant standard, because I want to show you, somebody asked about that, and this will really show you how fast this device really is. Now, like I said, call quality, second to none on this device. Best Verizon device I've tested in recent memory for call quality. I mean, constantly 4 bars of service, crystal clear calls. My home office is not in the best area when it comes to cell service. The HTC, the Droid Incredible 2 was pulling between 1 and 2 bars for the most part in my home office. This pulls almost always 4, occasionally 3 bars. So keep that in mind. The DBM looks good. The RF on this device is fantastic. Not to get too nerdy, but the RF is fantastic. And the earpiece is nice and loud. Speakerphone, same way. Speakers back on the back, nice and loud. And so overall, like if you're looking for a voice call or a phone to make voice calls, and that's your most important thing, here's your phone, because I was just blown away with the call quality on this device. So absolutely fantastic. Do want to proceed? You can see the different little icon. Quadrant standard score 2,495. So compare that to about 1,100, 1,200 on the old Droid X. You can see it down here. You can see the Evo here in comparison. The Nexus 1, the Galaxy S stuff kind of hovers around 1,000 to 1,200. I mean, so it's a fast device, and it's just such an odd, I know I keep harping on this, but it's so odd to me that one of their 3G devices just happens to be like the highest equipped. It's like the Ferrari device with all the goodies on it, but it only goes 100 miles per hour, and then you have like the Maserati that has a 4-cylinder. I don't really know anything about cars, but you get the idea. Like, this is the high-end, high-spec device, and if it had 4G, it'd be the flagship. It just doesn't have 4G. But internals, I mean, it's #1 when it comes to internals. Now let's go into speed test, because like I said, I mean, it's running EVDO revision A. It's not a 4G device. But I've been really pleased between all the 3G devices like that I tested recently, like the Incredible 2 and some of the others. I've been really impressed with how quick this has been. Like, it just seems faster to me. It's not usually I complain about Verizon's network in comparison to HSPA Plus and things like that. This has been pretty impressive. So we'll see here what we can get. And you know, it is about, it's about 6 o'clock, so we're in rush hour. So something to keep in mind, the speeds may not be as great as they usually are. I usually average between about 1.2 and 1.7 megabits per second on the download. Upload, I average between about 0.5 and 0.9 megabits per second. So, you know, speeds have been pretty good thus far, and I think I wiped the results recently, but that was one recent result I got. So just under 2 megabits per second on the speed. So I mean, it's pretty impressive. I've been pleased with this device, and honestly, it's one of those devices where, you know, 4G on Verizon still has a lot of kinks to work out. It cuts in and out, at least for me in the Charlotte area and several other places I've been. This is a tried and true device. 3G is fast enough to me where I would actually recommend this to a lot of people, not just for people that need internet connectivity, but also who want the highest performing device on Verizon in terms of overall specs. You know, if you don't need the front-facing camera and you don't need 4G, but you want that dual-core processor, this is the one to get. Much more coverage to come on PhoneDog.com, so keep it locked on the site. Droid X2, Palooza, a lot of exciting content coming up the next couple of days. Be sure to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/PhoneDog. We're giving away iPads, smartphones, and more as part of our colossal iPad 2 and smartphone sweepstakes. You know you want to see me on camera. I'm there every Tuesday, every Thursday at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern, giving this stuff away on our PhoneDog Live channel, which you can find on our Facebook page. Be sure to follow me on Twitter as well, PhoneDog_Aaron, and on Facebook at my new Facebook fan page at facebook.com/PhoneDogAB. Thanks so much for watching. Hit me up on the Twitter or the Facebook if you have any questions about this device. Latest!